This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Will Friedle, the voice of the future Dark Knight, Batman Beyond.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to a very special episode 379 of the DCAU Review. I am Liam, and with me, as he always is Cal. And Cal, that big milestone 379, that's what an essential episode number we have here. Well, honestly, it's just kind of how it worked out with the amount of episodes we had left. But yes, as listeners know, a couple of weeks ago, we completed our final original Batman Beyond review. We have now reviewed every episode of that series, at least once. We might go back and revisit a few, especially some of those early ones. But since we have done that, like we did with BTOS before, it is now time for a series overview. It's time for us to definitively decide the best and the worst episodes of this groundbreaking animated series. And who better than us, really?
Nobody. But truly, it's crazy. In the nearly 8 years of this podcast existence, this is only the second series we've completed somehow. And honestly, there are some people that count the New Batman Adventures as Batman the Animated Series. Mm-hmm. So in some people's minds, we haven't even completed a single series yet. And this is a landmark moment. But hey, it's our podcast, and this is how we're doing it. And I will just say also here, a little bit of a clarification. I saw when we did the best of our top ranked and worst ranked episodes of Batman the Animated Series, I saw that there was some online chatter that apparently people did not agree with us. And I would just like to clarify, first of all, and say, okay, well then do your own podcast. And then second of all, the way that in which that we have done this, and the reason why we started this podcast to begin with, was not to definitively say this is my favorite episode. It is all because we do these rankings with a scorecard, and then we compare each and every episode with one another, favorably or unfavorably. And sometimes that's very difficult across multiple different series that had very different looks, very different budgets, very different tones. But we try and make it work to make it as understandable as possible. So I will just say this, that these are based on our scoring. These are the top ranked and worst ranked episodes of Batman Beyond, but that doesn't always indicate the enjoyment of the episodes or that we feel like these are the ones that would be our favorite episodes necessarily. Some of them may. There's going to be some crossover here, but as we discussed on that Batman Animated Series episode, there were episodes that did not make it into that upper echelon of criteria that we felt kind of bad about because they're good episodes and we enjoy them. They just didn't meet the criteria based on our scoring system. So that's my little soapbox moment here. Feel free to debate us on this and contact us on our social medias if you would like to, or like I said, start your own podcast and do your own rankings and scores and tell us why we're wrong. You know, we might listen to that. I might be willing to hear somebody else's opinion out, but for the moment, yes, Liam, today we are going to discuss our top-ranked Batman Beyond episodes and bottom-ranked episodes. And you know what? We might even pick one or two at the end that didn't quite make it into our top rankings here that we felt, still deserve a shout-out here. But before we do that, let's talk about supporting the podcast, shall we? That's right. Support the podcast over at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, the best way to support the podcast. You can do that. Head over today and support us. You can become a one-time supporter of things. If you want to argue with me right now and tell me why our scorecard is wrong, hey, become a one-time supporter of the podcast. I will read your answer on the air next week explaining why we're wrong. Happy to do that. But you have to support the podcast as a one-time supporter. Or, hey, you know what? Maybe you really enjoy the podcast. You want to encourage us. You want to keep us going. You love our scorecards and the way that we score things. Become a monthly supporter of the podcast. We have 3 different levels to do so. Each of them come with some really cool perks. The top one, our Super Friend level, comes with the perk to ask us a question and hear your answer on the air the very next week, regarding the episode that we're talking about. So whether you want to become a one-time supporter and encourage us that way or discourage us, please it's a free country. You can discourage us with your support. That's fine. Or become a monthly supporter of the podcast. We invite you to head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and please support this podcast today.
That's right. So with all of that out of the way, we can go ahead and get into we'll start with the top ranked. We'll start with the positivity and then work our way into the muck. And as we said, we might also take a look at, because as we also talked in the origins of our podcast, we did it. The origins were us comparing and contrasting our own favorite episodes with various internet listicles. So we did find one that has ranked allegedly the top 12 episodes of this series. So we'll also be looking at that a little bit later on in the show. But as we said, everyone else's opinions not as important as ours. So we're going to start with our top ranked episodes. Cal didn't say that. I'm saying that.
I just happen to agree. I just happen to agree with you. That's all.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about our top favorite episodes, and thankfully, I think it almost goes in order of the episodes we covered them in too. So we will start out going all the way back to episode 27 of our podcast, Cal, one of the first episodes of Batman Beyond we ever covered. I believe we did that in a double feature. The first appearance of Ink in Blackout. So this is very early days. But I mean, come on. First of all, the introduction of Ink, who's one of the most iconic villains, one of the villains we've pointed out repeatedly, was so robbed by the lack of toys and merch for that character over the years. And then also, I mean, it's maybe one of the most iconic finales to an episode, as Bruce and Terry go toe to toe with Ink in the Batcave. The trophy case is getting destroyed. The Gray Ghost mask. There's so much fun stuff, both for longtime DCAU fans and also as just establishing a new rogue for Terry as his own Batman, kind of right out of the gate.
And one of the most inducing moments in DCAU history, where Ink tries to force feed herself down Terry's throat. Yeah, that's instantly unforgettable based on a lot of things.
I think that's the introduction of Barbara Gordon to the new Batman as he leaves the frozen ink outside her window. So a big seminal episode. And like we said, starting out, we talked about that recently, I think, when we reviewed the final episode, but how much they wanted this show, Bruce Timm, Alan Burnett, Glenn Murakami, Paul Dini, the sort of the quadrilogy of producers who kind of helmed this show together, really wanted it to stand on its own as Terry's show, and didn't necessarily want to just keep going back to the well of doing, your Two-Face Beyonds, your Riddler Beyonds, etc. So you gave that episode, Cal, a 36 out of 40. And I gave it a 35 out of 40. So that's that we eventually introduced. I don't know if we had introduced it back then, but sort of anything with a 36 or higher from one of us as a final score goes automatically into the top picks echelon of our shows. So that one was immediately in rarefied air. Did not take Beyond long. I would love to check. We'd have to do some math. That has to be the quickest show, I would think, to have a top scored or a top pick episode, the second episode of the series, and we were already finding one of the best ones. So that says a lot about how strong. I really think about that, as we kind of look over the whole series. That season 1 came out so strong. We talked about sort of the Buffyification of the show and how it got very high school in the later seasons, but that first season is just real tight. So I agree. I think that's a pretty strong outing right out of the gate there with the second or technically third episode, since Rebirth is 2 parts. But that is reflected in our scores, and we wouldn't have to wait long to get another episode into our top picks, as in episode 28 of our show, the very next episode we recorded, we reviewed. Ironically, we were just talking about how the importance of introducing unique new villains for Terry to fight. Well, this time we met an old favorite, and that was, of course, the episode Meltdown, which serves as the incredibly poetic and tragic epilogue, if you will, to the Victor Fries character, going all the way back to the classic Heart of Ice in the original Batman the Animated Series. There were movies, there were new Batman adventures, there were tie-in comics, but it all comes to an end in this a very tragic showdown between Terry, Mr. Freeze, and oh right, the first time Terry meets a big green glowing skeleton man as well.
Yeah, this is one that I would love to revisit at some point. I think it is, boy, it is just as you put it, a poetic ending, a tragedy, a tragic ending to the Mr. Freeze saga. And as you mentioned, looking back at it, I think there are times where you wish, I kind of want to know what happened to this character or what happened to that character. But as you mentioned, the showrunners didn't just want to do every single futuristic version of the original Bat Rogues Gallery, but this is a character that they felt comfortable bringing in here, and I think you have this weird dance that happens between Batman, Mr. Freeze, and Blight, as you mentioned it, who makes an appearance here. Derek Powers is using Victor as a way to potentially test this ability to essentially create a new body for himself. That way he can stop this radiation poisoning that's affecting his own body. So, that eventually goes horribly wrong. And the doctor that has maybe become a romantic interest for Victor, that helped switch him into this new body, is also working with Derek Powers, gets the orders directly from Derek to well, we need to terminate our specimen at that point, and then everything from there just goes haywire as Victor finds out, and as he likes to say, revenge is a dish best served cold, and boy howdy does he get to hand out some revenge here. But at the end, it's the tragedy really seals things. When I think about this episode, I think about some of those iconic Freeze lines, but really the one that sticks out is, Terry really comes into his own here. It's really one of the first times that we see him butting heads and having a different perspective than this cold, old, jaded Bruce does, where he kind of believes in the redemption of Mr. Freeze, where Bruce isn't quite ready to give him that chance based on his own history with Victor. So, the fact that Freeze ultimately succumbs to, this revenge and wanting to take out, kill multiple people as a result of them trying to kill him. Batman does his best to try and save Victor as the whole facility around them is collapsing. And, this tragic line that he gives Batman, Mr. Freeze tells him at the end, believe me, you're the only one who cares, as the building, collapses around him and he separates himself off, ultimately we believe killing, dying in the destruction of the building there. But yeah, it is a haunting episode. Everything works so well together. Obviously having Michael Ansara back to voice Mr. Freeze is, like putting on a pair of comfortable shoes. It just fits and feels right. And he fits in well with this cast, and just did an incredible job. And that was reflected in our scores. Ironically, I'm giving all this praise on it, but you're the one who gave it a higher score than I did for some reason. Again, another top pick. We're 4 episodes in here, technically, not including the two-parter, the first episode, and we have another top pick here, as you gave it a 38 and I gave it a 35. So yeah, again, one that we'll hopefully get to revisit here in the not too distant future and chat about, as it is a classic and worthy of being discussed. Some of the ins and outs here. An incredible story written by the late Hilary J. Bader along with Alan Burnett, and directed by Kurt Gaeta. So an excellent episode and the perfect way to bring back one of those old rogues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that's such a gut punch of an ending to that episode is what I always think about. And again, when we talk about breaking it down into our 4 categories, our plot scores, our music, our visuals, our voice acting, it's all of it in that final scene, as Terry is crying out to him saying, the whole building's going to collapse. You got to get out of here. And as you said, Mr. Freeze utters those final words, and then the guitar swells, and everything comes crashing down. It's an amazing moment, and it's a great Terry learning about what it is to be Batman, because there is that sort of, you could look at it as naivete or the very Batman-esque wanting to believe that people can change and be better, and Bruce being a bit more bitter and jaded by the whole thing, and ultimately Bruce going to Terry and saying that we were kind of both right. Yes, he went down that path, but he was also kind of pushed there, and he did ultimately, they both kind of leave believing that Freeze was trying his best there. And it's this very sort of bittersweet moment where Terry kind of learns what it is to be Batman, to still maintain that faith in humanity even when it's shaken, and Bruce is kind of there to mentor him through that. So that is a fantastic episode, as you said, and our scores reflect that. And next up on our list would be several episodes down the line, although maybe now, looking at how long our show has gone, maybe we jumped the gun and got to this too early, because this is another one we might need to revisit in more depth someday. But later on in episode 70 of the podcast, we covered, of course, the seminal Batman Beyond film, the one and only Batman Beyond movie, at least as of now, and that is, of course, Return of the Joker. Now, this is huge because not only is it Batman, the young Batman, Terry McGinnis, facing off against an old rogue, but it's also something, as we've just been talking about, they didn't talk about a lot of what had happened to all of the new Batman adventures or B-Task characters beyond your Mr. Freeze, Barbara, and Bruce. So here we find out what happened to the second Robin of the DCAU, or maybe the third, who can keep it all straight, Tim Drake. And it certainly seems they set it up very much like this is going to be the DCAU's Death in the Family, sort of emulating what happens to Jason Todd in the famous Death in the Family comics. And instead, arguably, Joker does something a lot worse than kill Tim Drake in this movie. And both in the flashbacks and when we cut back to the present day, as Terry is sort of left to pick up the pieces as this guy who's claiming to be the Joker, who sure looks like the Joker, sure sounds like the Joker, sure rattles Bruce like the Joker used to. But how is that possible? Because he's dead.
Yeah, that's the mystery that's worth solving, right? And as you mentioned, this is it feels like cheating a little bit, because obviously it's not an episode, but it still goes in here because we obviously did rank it very high, as we'll talk about with our scores here. But yeah, it puts a nice little bow on the DCAU, kind of bridging us between series here of what happened between the new Batman adventures and where we pick things up in Rebirth and see an older Bruce Wayne who's jaded, alone, and as we've seen kind of in some of these episodes leading up to where, when we reviewed this movie, his relationship with Barbara feels very cold and very professional at times, and almost adversarial in some cases. So, what led to them having a fracture in their relationship? So we really do learn a lot about that as we're leading up here in the middle of this Batman Beyond movie that, as you said, features Mark Hamill returning as the Joker and getting to interact on screen with this new Joker's gang, and obviously different other great voices. Michael Rosenbaum plays one of the Jokers, and we get to kind of the introduction of the Dee characters. We get a nice little red herring of just who the Joker might be, like the true identity of the Joker, when we have this hostile takeover attempt of Wayne Enterprises is kind of like this undertone story here. So yeah, it's very interesting. There's a little bit of mystery. There's a huge mystery that happens all the way up to the big reveal spoiler alert for this movie that if you're listening to this podcast, hopefully you've seen. Otherwise, turn off the podcast now and go watch this movie. But yeah, the big reveal at the end that the horrible, no good thing that the Joker did to Tim Drake in kind of converting him into a mini Joker was not the worst thing that he did. He actually laid dormant in him for years and created, allowing himself to kind of rebirth through Tim Drake in his later years and kind of come out here and terrorize Gotham again. So yeah, seeing those interactions, obviously Terry's Batman interacting with Mark Hamill's Joker is just, another fun little bit here. Them having verbal
that's
barbs.
The most fun, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
I think, and also, and it's ultimately the Joker's undoing is that because Terry has this sort of youthful defiance to him, he's like, this guy sucks. like there's no mystique to the Joker to him, and he understands. He sort of immediately figures out, oh, I know how to get at this guy, and so he just insults him and laughs at him, which ultimately is not what the Joker wants, because as he says, he's Joker almost representing sort of like a certain type of like forum troll who's like, you're not the real Batman, not my Batman.
Right.
He hates the idea of this pretender is mocking him, like he hasn't earned the right, he's not the real Batman, and how that's ultimately makes the Joker sloppy, so that Terry solves things his way instead of kind of relying more on Bruce's methods in the end.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, ultimately, again, it's a full-length movie, so it almost feels unfair to put this in here. So maybe if you want to put a little asterisk next to it, that's kind of why we went with the number of episodes that we have here. So we ended up giving a 37 and a 38 out of 40 respectively between the two of us. As we mentioned, the voice, everything from the voice acting, the animation is really incredible. Some really great digital stuff that was done by the team there. Obviously, incredible music also it featured in there, and some really memorable lines and moments, I think, that I'll probably remember far after the time I've forgotten names of friends and relatives. So yeah, some really, really great stuff there. Unsurprisingly, check out episode 70 of the podcast if we didn't mention it, if you want to hear our full review. And I think, again, as you mentioned, this one definitely deserves a look back now that we're 300 plus episodes past this at this point. We should probably take a look back and see if there was anything that was worth going over again.
Absolutely. And not to be too much of a downer, but if there's a line that I think epitomizes Kevin Conroy's entire career, it's the line that he says to Terry at the end of that film, which is, it's not Batman that makes you worthwhile, it's the other way around. So that every year when we just recently passed the anniversary of Kevin's passing. His birthday will also be coming up soon at the time of our recording, at least the original time of recording and dropping this episode. So always on our minds is like Kevin Conroy, and yeah, that episode in or that line in Return of the Joker that's the line that I will always think of when I think of his Bruce Wayne, his Batman. So yeah. Love that's in there, and it deserves a place on our best of here as we look over the entire run of Batman Beyond. And later on down the line in episode 88 of the show, we would move on to another episode of the series, one entitled Bloodsport, a sort of Craven the Hunter-esque, but cool, I'll say it, but cooler character comes to town, kidnaps Terry's brother Matt, and holds him hostage as he is after the ultimate big game hunt, that of course being the Batman, the Stalker's first appearance in the animated series. So much fun. And the thing that really, I think, when I saw this episode was on our list, I was a little surprised that it was this highly ranked. You gave it a 38. I gave it a 39. So we loved this episode when we covered it. But the thing that really stuck out to me immediately was like the visuals in that episode, the way the stalker moves. There's these really interesting like red bathed flashback sequences where he's hunting this panther. There's some crazy visuals in that one, and that's kind of what stands out to me about that episode, along with the rest of the rest of our categories.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's also the scene where he gets the spinal fusion surgery at the is also
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
bathed in that red, and then the ultimately the final sequence where he's kind of stunned and lost his vision and wakes up on the train tracks as the train is bearing down towards him. We get that POV shot where he kind of sees this panther that ultimately was his undoing, or partial undoing originally, and what forced him to have this gigantic scar on his neck and back. And he sees the train. We get that POV shot, the train bearing down on him, and he sees it as the panther once again coming to like attack him. So yeah, that the visuals in that episode are absolutely fantastic. We do get a lot of POV shots of him hunting Terry and some of that amongst the other things that we just mentioned. But yeah, Carl Lumbly, by the way, is the voice of the Stalker. So one of his initial
Mhm.
appearances here in the DCAU, if not his initial appearance in the DCAU, setting up obviously a little bit before his turn as Martian Manhunter. But yeah, and Anansi the Spider, of course. But yeah, I
Mhm.
think the turn that he takes here is quite memorable. I know that the music we liked it too because because of the character being this big game African big game hunter type, as you mentioned, very much based on or in the same vein as Craven the Hunter. We get some real like tribal percussion and drums and flutes and some of that I think traditional African music that goes along with it. So we had a bunch of different
Mhm.
unique things, some really great performances by people, all combining with these really great visuals that lead to one of the most memorable episodes that really stood out in a way. And I think this is one of those episodes where if you had sat me down at the beginning and just said, "Hey, what do you think the top episodes that you're going to end up ranking?" I don't know that Bloodsport would have been one of the episodes that I would have assumed would be on this list, like you said. But I think once we look at the criteria that we chose to grade these episodes on, it makes a ton of sense because all of those things are really fascinating and really, really striking in this episode. And that combined with music and voice acting and the plot of the episode kind of all works together to create this really, really nice episode. So yeah, when you think about it and you kind of look at the criteria, it makes sense why this episode ends up on the list.
Yeah, and unique, I think, also because by the end, when the Stalker's kind of been defeated and he's kind of having his little freak out at the end,
Hmm.
I always think like there aren't a lot of episodes, even though Terry, is very much his own Batman. As we said, he's more of a fist first type of character. There's not a lot of episodes of Terry like striking fear in the hearts of criminals,
Hmm.
a la Bruce. And this is one rare episode where by the end of it, that villain is running scared for
100%. Yeah.
from Batman. So that's a fun little wrinkle as well. And as we said, yeah, very strong scores from us. And a few episodes down the line, in episode 106, our next top pick would be the episode Babel or Babel, depending on how you pronounce it, how pretentious you're feeling on a given day. But that I believe we reviewed that in a double feature with another episode, if I'm not mistaken. But strong scores, you gave it a 38 out of 40. I gave it a 37 out of 40. It's the return of Shriek, another one of the original villains created for this series, and this time he's turning the sound on and off and destroying parts of Gotham, creating chaos. Promises that he'll only stop messing with the sound in the city if Batman turns himself over to him. It becomes this episode where Bruce is sort of put in between Barbara and Terry, and it's really up to Terry to kind of make a decision. Is he going to sacrifice himself, give himself up, and even against Bruce's wishes? Who is by this point in the series, certainly you see that the paternal instincts of Bruce, or the mentor mentee instincts, are very strong. He really cares about Terry, and he's almost like, hey, the city can kick rocks. This kid doesn't deserve this. And it's really Terry's moment to say, no, this is what being Batman is. And if I need to sacrifice myself to protect people, I will. And that kind of sets up our big finale there. It's a very big dramatic episode. And I think it's again another episode interesting of seeing how Bruce views the mantle of Batman and how he views Terry, his admiration for Terry, and then Terry, again, still being a teenage boy at this point, taking yet another step towards being, being his own Batman and going his own way.
Yeah, this is one again. I'm kind of shocked looking back at the scores, because this episode would not have been one that I'm like, yeah, this one left a lasting impression on me as like, man, this is one of the best ones. But that's why we try and review these in a vacuum, on their own. This one obviously up against, in a double feature, but most of these episodes in a vacuum on their own, giving them their own chance here to kind of stand out. So yeah, the idea, Shriek is such an interesting villain, and obviously his first appearance is a memorable one, with some of the sound design and some of the things, the choices that they choose. Obviously that suit is interesting looking, and the idea of his power set there is interesting. But yeah, I think the dynamics here again, I think, with such high scores across the board here, it's everything once again working together. Specifically, I think some of our voice acting performances were pretty memorable here. Again, you have Michael Rosenbaum playing like this little assistant splicer to that's like an assistant to Shriek, in a very small supporting role there. But yeah, I think most of our voice acting chops come from the Stockard Channing and Kevin Conroy interacting, and then Terry, obviously Will Friedle is Terry, interacting with, kind of as you mentioned, kind of in between the three of them, or between the three of them. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Also, I think this is another one where the end is kind of very memorable, and how the villain is defeated. Like, he's defeated by his own, the fact that the decisions that he's made that has led him to the point where he cannot hear. He's ultimately not able to hear Batman's warning for the buildings that are collapsing all around him, that he's caused to collapse. So it's like double whammy, for him. Like, he's made himself deaf based on his own power set, and then he's creating all of this destruction that he's hoping will lead to more deaths, and he ultimately is kind of caught in his own trap at this point. So yeah, very very interesting stuff here. I think some of it also is this: the episode starts off with Bruce and Terry working on the bat suit and having this very interesting moment where they're kind of swapping war stories, and Bruce is kind of educating Terry on some of the past of being Batman. And then it kind of wraps up with this bookend of the same exact thing. They're working on the suit. Bruce is reminded why he chose to be Batman, and why he enjoyed it so much, and why Terry should also enjoy that. And they kind of have this moment together, very father and son type moment, if you will, at the end there. So yeah, there's some really good memorable stuff in here. Again, this one was a surprise when I was going through looking at the rankings, though, that it ended up here. But it's a good solid episode.
Yeah, totally agree. Like I said, it's definitely was a little bit surprising that it ended up in our top picks. But as you said, it was a strong outing, and it does quite a bit. And again, as we said, very unique villain is Shriek, so that always adds a little bit extra to it as well. But just one episode later, after we gave Babel, you gave it a 38, and I gave it a 37. Just one episode later for us, episode 107. Now, this one I am very much not surprised to see is on our list because of our repeated professed love for this episode. I think even before we reviewed it, we were talking on the show about how excited we were. It's the seminal classic, that being Terry's Friend Dates a Robot. You gave it a 38 out of 40. I gave it a 37 out of 40. I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, maybe in our honorable mentions. I think maybe, and especially if you're a younger person, like if you're 12, 14, whatever, maybe you don't like a more comedic episode. You want the action, you want the serious stuff. But watching this back for our show, we had such a ball with this episode. It's so funny. Like the character of Howard Groot, who is this kind of just, he's got friends. It's not, they don't go like the full like 80s loser, Revenge of the Nerds type, but he's got his little collection of friends, but he's looking for what he considers a hot girlfriend. And instead of working on his personality or maybe trying to improve his appearance, he goes into a different route, stop me if this sounds familiar. imagine someone falling in love with something that isn't real, a robot, an AI, something like that. Hopefully that never happens in the real world. Yeah, Howard goes and gets himself a robot or a replicant girlfriend, and boy, it. The problem is they made her so devoted to Howard that when he does start to get attention from other young ladies at his school and is kind of ready to ditch poor Cynthia, the synthoid, she doesn't take that well.
Yeah, this is one of Paul Dini's masterpieces. I mean, his many masterpieces, but it is infused completely with humor. I mean, nothing is taken completely seriously. It reads very much or watches very much like a horror comedy from like the 80s or something like that, or a style where the guy gets his wish, he pays for his robot girlfriend, and she's all over him. And as you mentioned, he starts to get the attention from the real girls that he was actually interested in. And when he starts showing attention to them, yep, it goes a little haywire. And wouldn't you know, the robot doesn't understand that it's a robot and starts to be jealous. And Howard doesn't quite handle the jealousy in the smartest way either, is one of the more memorable moments of him breaking the news to Cynthia, his robot, that they can just be friends. Happens in this
I'll tell
episode.
you what, it created maybe my favorite reaction gif or reaction image to post on various social media over the years is Cynthia with her head tilted and her eye kind of bulging and a little bit of electricity popping out of her ear. I was like, big mood, Cynthia. We've all been there.
Yeah, it's great. It also of course leads to what may in fact end up being, like, by the time we're done reviewing everything, we're gonna be like doing a lot of these listicles, I feel like, and we're gonna have to come with like the best lines in the history of the DCAU. One of them has to be, what did you use to buy with it? Dynamite? Dynamite to blow up our house with? We have one of the most famous voices in all of voice acting history. With Dan Castellaneta playing Howard's dad, who gets back from this vacation, seeing his son has thrown a party at their residence, and because of the destruction of this robot, he's blown up their house. And that line that he delivers is just, I don't know. Every time I think of that and I think of that little bit there, I could watch that scene and listen to that delivery from Mr. Castellaneta for the rest of my life and never never stop laughing. It's so good and so funny. But yeah, this episode
It's
leans into the ridiculousness of the story, and you kind of just go with it as a one of those fun Paul Dini episodes with quirky humor. And yeah, it's not so to me, it's not surprising. We love those episodes. They're not every it's few and far between that we get those comedy episodes, and this one is much more lighthearted, but obviously there is some real danger, and there's still some action and some really great voice performances and fun music that all plays throughout, which contributes to that high score.
absolutely, yeah. That's a Stone Cold classic. Also a departure musically. We talk about how electric guitar and drum driven the music for Beyond was so much of the time. Howard's got this like funky disco score when he's like strutting through the halls with Cynthia on his arm. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's hilarious. The music adds so much to that. As you mentioned, some of the line deliveries are just out of this world. Even Terry as Batman having to interact with this situation is hilarious. And then yes, the pièce de resistance with Howard's mom and dad coming home to see the destruction is just, yeah, Hall of Fame. It's a comedic episode, but it's as you said, maybe one of the very funniest, if not the funniest DCAU episode. Period.
Mm-hmm.
That's another listicle episode we'll do someday.
Yeah,
Is
sure.
compare that to like Laughing Fish and Mixes Pixelated and some of those other great ones. But yeah, that's a stone cold classic in our eyes. And again, you could disagree, but you'd be wrong. So with that out of the way, that gets us to our final top pick, and I think by combined scores, one of our one of our top picks. One of our top picks. So I guess as we're looking at this, no episodes of Batman Beyond made it to the perfect score of 40 out of 40 on our list,
Yeah,
which is
that's I was honestly shocked, and I think maybe looking at how early some of these episodes were reviewed, the 27s, the 28s, I think
mhm,
we were still finding our footing a little bit here, and maybe a little bit scared to go above and beyond, if you will,
mhm, mhm.
with some of our scores here. But yeah, shocking, we didn't get a perfect score out of any of these. So that is still like the ultimate test of rarefied air is the 40 out of 40, and nothing apparently. Maybe a miscarriage of justice there, but yeah, nothing apparently that we would have given a 40 out of 40, including this last episode, which came pretty darn
Ab-
close.
Absolutely. It came as close as just about as close as you could, that being way, way back there, several episodes later, all the way in episode 292, we covered the episode Out of the Past. And I gave it a 39 out of 40. You gave it a 37 out of 40. But of course, folks will remember this episode as the return of Talia Al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul's daughter, seemingly to the world, offering Bruce, who has kind of really felt his age, first because Terry dragged him to a Batman musical, which is amazing in and of itself. And then as we get into the plot there, Bruce has this moment where he and a young girl he's trying to save from a mugger almost get hit by a car because he's too weak. He can't do what he once could. And Talia comes back with seemingly the ultimate offer he would want, and that is, of course, a dip in the Lazarus pit. Bruce could be young again, and perhaps live out a much longer life and a much healthier life. And it's interesting. Not only is it bringing back characters from BTOS, which we talked about, they didn't do a lot across the series. It also plays with the idea of what would that mean if Bruce was suddenly healthy and young again. What would that mean for Terry? Are there two Batmans yet? Two Batman then? Is
Mhm.
Terry getting fitted for the Robin suit? What's happening here? We unfortunately didn't get to find out and spoiler alert again. Hopefully you've heard that episode or have watched that episode if you're listening to this. But here's your spoiler alert: it's not Talia al Ghul who offers Bruce this gift, and it's not really a gift so much as a trap. As not only has Ra's al Ghul cheated death by imprinting his own brain into his daughter's body, he's then going to jump from his daughter's body into Bruce's young Lazarus Pit infused body, and I guess rule the world as the long lost son of Talia and Bruce Wayne. And boy, it almost works. And thankfully, Terry and Bruce are able to team up and stop it. But not only do you bring back this old BTOS character, it's an exploration of Bruce Wayne's getting older. It's an exploration of the lost loves of Bruce Wayne, the loneliness of Bruce Wayne. There's a lot packed into this. It's one of, as we talked about, especially as we got further into the series, one of the few episodes I would say that really focuses on the Bruce character as opposed to the character. Terry's kind of takes a little bit of a back seat for this one. And it creates, again, I think, this really lovely, for lack of a better term, epilogue for Bruce, who has to maybe come to terms and finally accept his age and also accept, the women that he's sort of lost or left behind in his life by choosing to follow this crusade to its end.
Very much a Bruce Wayne, this is your life moment, right? And we could
Mhm.
see a lot of maybe the regrets that he's had. He's kind of thinking about the things that he could have done differently in a way. A lot of introspection from Mr. Wayne here. And stop me if you've heard this. Written by Paul Dini, directed by James Tucker. Man,
Mhm.
what a one-two punch right there for this episode. Yeah, as goofy as the very end of it feels with like the sci-fi nonsense, it is. I remember I mean, we talked about it when we reviewed it, but I remember watching this originally, and the moment that you find out that Ra's al Ghul is in Talia's body is a moment that I will never forget, from like the
Yeah.
reaction point of, oh, what the heck? Like that is so gross. Like
Yeah.
that's so nasty. And I mean, some of the lines between Terry and Bruce about that, obviously, you? She didn't kiss you, or I'm the one she kissed, or whatever he says. Very memorable. Very memorable there, very funny. But yeah, it is one of those rare things. Like you said, there's a handful of episodes that kind of deal with Bruce and kind of have him as more of a focal point, but this one really does kind of feel like that tribute to a younger Bruce, again, kind of filling in some of the gaps in between. What would a 50-year-old, 55-year-old, maybe Dark Knight Returns style DCAU Batman look like? We kind of see that a little bit here. And it's short-lived, but yeah, there's the team up between young Batman and old Batman happening here, all wrapped up in this wild tale of what's going to happen with Ra's al Ghul. Is he going to complete this crazy body swap thing again? So yeah, it's a fun episode, obviously one of the most memorable ones for multiple different reasons, but this one would not have shocked me to go on that list solely, I think, for the Batman musical moment, A Superstitious Cowardly Lot being one of the songs.
Yes, that's the actual lyrically written song of I am Gotham's darkest night, the villain's darkest fright. Just an amazing moment. And then of course, you also do get the moment as Terry and Bruce are trying to escape right before that horrifying Talia reveal, where Terry and Bruce, for the one and only time really in this series, we get to see Terry and Bruce fighting side by side, and that rocked up Batman, the Shirley Walker Batman theme comes in at that moment, and it's like that's just perfect stuff, man. It's everything we talk about of all the various parts of our all our various categories coming together. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see that one sitting close to the top, if not the top. But yes, that concludes our list, our picks for the top episodes of Batman Beyond ever, and that leads us. We'll get to our lowest rank. That'll be kind of our fun ending, but we do have a couple of other things we're going to do, as mentioned. First, I think since we're still talking about our faves here, we did each pick an honorable mention, maybe one that didn't make it into our top picks via the score, but one that we feel like, hey man, that's a really cool episode, or that's a great episode, or has a couple great moments in it. So Cal, why don't you hit the folks with your honorable mention episode?
Yeah, it's funny. You know what? I think this one feels, we kind of discussed before we went on the air what our picks would be, and it felt like there was some pretty low-hanging fruit here. I think I originally told you I was going to go with The Call because of obviously the importance of the introduction of the Justice League Unlimited, and the idea of Superman interacting with Batman is really cool. But I think in just discussing this, the even more glaringly obvious one that we missed here is got to be Rebirth. The fact the introduction of Batman Beyond, the character introducing us to Terry, that sequence where we get the old Bruce Wayne introduced for the very first time, and his interaction between him and the Jokers, the opening sequence with an old Bruce Wayne, or an older Bruce Wayne in the Batman Beyond suit, picking up the gun and putting his suit away for the very last time, kind of again bridging some of that time between the new Batman adventures to where we end up in Beyond. It's a moment in time. I remember watching that when it debuted on a Sunday night way back when, and I think in February of 2000, when that debuted. And it's a moment that I certainly won't forget, and is obviously, this show doesn't exist, and certainly laying the groundwork for what the show was going to be. Who Terry is, establishing him as an interesting character, setting up the Blight storyline that would be the background for the entire first season. The haunting tragedy of Terry's father being murdered. That was one of those, we talked about scary moments in the DCAU a couple of weeks back. That moment was one that haunted me for a couple of days. Him walking in on the spray painted apartment of his dad after his dad was murdered. That one was a spooky, scary moment too. But yeah, Rebirth 1 and 2, I think, is probably one looking back again, I don't know how comfortable we were with scoring the different categories and being a little bit more generous in some of those categories when we started. So that's one eventually I'll look back at. I think is going to be important to kind of give ourselves the a correction here or there. But Rebirth feels like it needs to be on this list, and sadly is not.
Yeah, that is a great one. Yeah, there's just so many great moments. Terry suiting up for the first time in part two. Going toe to toe with Mister Fix in the ship at the end is a great moment. All that. Even the scene I always think about. I think it's in part one is after the funeral. It's like the scene. It's all like the room's all bathed in blue, and it's Terry just kind of pouring his heart out to his mom about how the last thing he said about how upset he is at the last conversation he had with his dad before he died, and how it's going to be this moment. It's very much the Peter Parker tells off Uncle Ben right before the before he gets shot type of moment for Terry. We obviously have talked about for years how much of the early sort of Steve Ditko Spider-Man is baked into the DNA of this Batman Beyond series, and so for Terry to have that moment so early on, I think really fits with what they were going for there. So yeah, that's great. And like everything we've just talked about, all things we just talked about, it's all standing on the shoulders of those pilot episodes. So that's absolutely deserving. And to just go in completely the opposite direction as far as an honorable mention pick, I'm gonna go with the Egg Baby, which is just, I think, another. We kind of just talked about this with Terry's Friend Dates a Robot. I know a lot of the comedy episodes are not everybody's favorite, especially when it's a Batman show. But I think this episode, it's just a delight. It's a very unique like setup for an episode with he has this kind of robot egg. It's sort of the classic but like the thing that happens in all the sitcoms where the kids have to take care of a sack of flour or whatever.
Mhm.
But in this case, it's a digital robot egg baby that Terry has to care for and feed, and he's paired with Blaze, who doesn't seem to care at all about it. So he's got to take it on adventures with him, and meanwhile they're fighting this completely ridiculous group called Ma Mayhem with her two sons. Just a very wacky, fun episode. I believe that's James Tucker's first credit as a director as well, which is a lot of fun. And it's the only episode of Batman Beyond to win a Daytime Emmy Award. So how about that? So it's pretty fun. I know it wouldn't necessarily be, you could name 100 other episodes, like we said, the Shrieks, some of the first Spellbinder is great. The Call, as you mentioned. But yeah, I'm going with the Egg Baby because I just think, again, it's very, very unique, and it has such a fun, light tone. And I love, again, Ma Mayhem is like such a Paul Dini villain to me.
Mhm.
So I love the idea as it's sort of described as like I believe they describe her as Kingpin in a dress in one of the special features. So like she's a lot of woman, but she's very strong, and she can get her hands dirty all on her own. So that
Yeah.
episode is a lot of fun for me as well.
Yeah, I like that one as well. It's a good solid pick. I mean, it's so memorable that the recent Mondo 1/6 Batman Beyond figure comes with its own Egg Baby accessory if you got the limited edition version. So that's how memorable of an episode it is you start getting accessories when you're in your action figures that are still being made some 20 plus years later. But yeah, that's an episode. I mean, Alan Burnett and Hilary J. Bader, I feel like really leaned into the idea that they kind of had to lighten things up just a tad and make things kind of revolve
Mhm.
around the Hamilton Hill High storyline there. So they kind of took this idea of like, all right, what happens in high schools? All right, we have this taking care of a baby thing. What if Batman had to take care of a baby during his crime fighting hours? And then you just kind of went from there. So yeah, between that and Mr. Tucker's direction, I think, yeah, you end up with a very classic and very memorable episode that could have easily landed on this top picks list.
Absolutely. And so we'll save the worst for last. We're going to do our lowest rank episodes to cap us off. But as mentioned, since the initial inspiration for this show was looking at other people's listings of the top episodes of Batman Beyond, Cal, you found us a list over on slashfilm.com, which boldly proclaims the 12 best episodes of Batman Beyond ranked. And so we're going to go down that list, see how many we have in common. And again, it's fine if they pick different episodes, but did they pick the right different episodes, or did they have or do they have some stinkers on their list that don't belong here? Let's find out as we go to this episode. As mentioned, it's called the 12 best episode Batman Beyond episodes ranked. It's written by a gentleman by the name of Joe Garza. Don't find him and yell at him. Be nice to him.
Yes. Don't harass anyone.
The listicle creating industry, I know, can be quite cruel to the writers. So they're doing their job, and they do a fine job. So we will get into here. Number 12. It goes 12-1. So we'll count down here. Number 12, which will be funny when we get to our worst episodes in a moment, is the episode that we just talked about a couple of weeks ago, the final episode of Batman Beyond to air, Unmasked, according to this lovely gentleman on slashfilm.com, is the 12th best episode of Batman Beyond ever made. No, it's not.
Respectfully, no, it is. Yeah, not a chance in hell. As we will soon discover, especially by our rankings here, this episode is not anywhere near the 12 best episodes of Batman Beyond. I would say April Moon is probably better than this episode. In fact, I know our scoring puts April Moon ahead of this episode. There are many, many episodes that I would choose to watch of Batman Beyond before I watched this one. And it is not this one. So, yeah, right off the bat, unfortunately, we are not starting off on a good foot in agreement here with Mr. Garza.
Yes, we'll move on to number 11 on their list, Dead Man's Hand. That's, of course, the first episode that introduces the Royal Flesh Gang of the future, which, of course, features the debut of Melanie Walker, a.k.a. 10, and Birth. Most importantly, I don't think this is necessarily a bad episode. I think this is a fine choice, and it's certainly a very seminal episode of the series because it introduces, Terry's version of the alternate love interest, the Black Cat type character for the series with Melanie. But really, what's important about this episode is it gives us a chance to talk about the hashtag that birthed from this episode, and that is, of course, hashtag Dana Deserves Better. Dana Tan, Terry's girlfriend, who rightfully breaks up with him at the start of this episode because he's an awful boyfriend. Terry, 5 seconds later, he's making out with this girl who turns out to be a supervillain. And I just like to say it serves him right.
Yeah. I would also agree with you that, of course, Dana deserves better. She needs to move on from Terry and deserves to be with someone much better. Hey, you know what? If things had gone right, maybe she could have ended up with somebody like Howard, a kind guy who gave her all the attention in the world. But no, this is one of many episodes that point out the glaring fact that Terry is a terrible boyfriend and that Dana must have some sort of self-esteem issue that it causes her to keep coming back to Terry, because clearly she needs some girl power around her to tell her that she deserves to be with a man that values her, because this episode proves that, yes, indeed, Dana deserves better. And as far as what we thought of this episode, Liam, which episode 39 was when we reviewed this one, we did not like this episode. This would have landed pretty far down our list here towards the bottom. 21 and 20 out of 40 were our scores for this one. So I think some of it had to do with us not liking that Terry was a scumbag. We didn't give the music high marks for this episode either. So yeah, there's some low scores here for this one. So we didn't love this one. I think that the bad taste was Terry being a terrible, borderline cheating boyfriend on his wonderful girlfriend. So.
Yeah, one bad apple can spoil the bunch sometimes. Though I do remember you particularly having a problem with the design of Melanie's hair. I remember you hating her hair.
The spaghetti hair. Yeah, I hate her hair so much.
Poodle hair. Yeah, I know. but we'll agree to disagree with Mr. Garza here and move on to number 10, episode Eyewitness from season 2. This is a kind of a strange mystery. Barbara Gordon appears to see Batman murder Mad Stan, and of course launches a citywide manhunt in reaction to that. Terry doesn't even really understand what's happening, but of course he swears that nothing happened. And when Bruce pulls the Batmobile's surveillance footage, he realizes there was someone else on the scene, sort of creating an illusion that fooled Barbara and the rest of the GCPD, none other than Spellbinder, who has framed Batman for murder. So it's sort of Terry being on the run for the whole episode as the full weight of the GCPD comes down on him, while he's also trying to solve what's really going on and find out what happened to Mad Stan as well, because he seems to have disappeared as well. So there's a lot going on. I don't think this would be in our top picks and score. It's a fun little episode. I think once you know what the reveal of it is, it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. We've talked. I think I remember us talking about that. Revisiting a mystery episode can be hard. It can be hard to put that genie back in the bottle. But I mean, it's a fun little episode. I don't mind it being on somebody else's list, but I don't think it made ours or really anywhere close.
Nope. It was episode 108 was when we reviewed that one. 25s across the board from you and I. And one of the topics that we discussed was the fact that it's hard, the tension building there of what the ultimate reveal is what, how did Barbara, so clear as day, see Terry kill Mad Stan versus, what actually happened or what we were expected to believe? And then we get the reveal at the end that it's Spellbinder behind everything. And once that's ruined, you kind of lose the tension a little bit. So yeah, we talked a little bit about that, and but ultimately not. It's better than the last couple of episodes that we've scored here. So can't fault Mr. Garza for putting that in the list. It's an okay one. That one I would probably put more towards 12 if we're going to go by what we're looking at here. But can't fault him for liking that one. It's not a bad episode.
That's right. And we'll move on here to number 9. That is the episode Ascension. That's the season 1 finale. It's the end of Derek Powers and Blight in this series. Some would say, unfortunately. I think we said unfortunately at the time, because he is such a great central figure to have the sort of Norman Osborn figure that's both the corporate antagonist, but also a supervillain in his own right. Is a great gag. But this introduces Derek's son Paxton, who kind of comes in to be the heir apparent, the sort of figurehead CEO, while Derek tries to search for a cure for his blightiness. But unfortunately, we find out that Paxton's actually hatched a little bit of a plot with some local mercenaries to expose Derek as Blight. And he does just that. And it leads to our big bombastic finale on a nuclear submarine as Batman, Paxton, and Blight come toe to toe as they attempt to solve their differences. Unfortunately, it's not solved peacefully.
Yeah, it is not. This is, as you mentioned, the final appearance of Blight in the series. Unfortunately, we have this entire season built up around this one guy, and this is the last we ever see of him. Unfortunately, our scores for the episode, which was episode 66 of the pod, 22 and 24 out of 40 were the scores that we gave. I know we talked a little bit about being disappointed that some of the tropes in the story were a little bit recycled, and obviously the disappointment of not seeing Blight again, as well as maybe a little bit of upsetting. Or a little bit feeling a little bit like the introduction of Paxton was going to lead to a bigger story that ultimately doesn't really get paid off very much in this show. So I think there's all of that. We did enjoy the Blight eats a sandwich scene. I think that contributed to our appreciation for the visuals and animation being so high as for our highest scores for the episode. But yeah, again, just kind of a middle towards the lower side of things here, but not the lowest score we're going to give there. So if you're going to put it on your list, I guess I'm not going to argue too much with you on that.
Yep, that's fair enough. And we'll move there to number 8 on this list, which is the episode Disappearing Ink. Now, you and I, Cal, just recently talked about this at the end of the spooky season this year, as this was famously the episode that got me banned from watching Batman Beyond by our parents when we were growing up. You can go back and listen to our top 5 spooky episodes of the DCAU episode that we did for Halloween this year. Just go head back in the archives and check that out for the full scoop on that story. But yeah, I mean, this episode, it's fun and it's iconic because we get Bruce suiting up in that sort of Alex Ross style mech suit, Batman suit, and we get the Shirley Walker Batman theme playing. It didn't make our top picks list, but it's got one of the more iconic moments of the whole show with Bruce suiting up again. So I can't exactly fault it for being on this list.
Yeah, we both gave it a 31 out of 40. We reviewed this one in episode 42. I would love to go back, I think, at some point to kind of do an overview, maybe with we already did a character spotlight with her, as we talked about a lack of actual tie-in toys and everything. But another review, maybe of individual episodes of the Ink saga would be interesting. But yeah, I think this episode has multiple just memorable, incredible moments. You know, the moments that are fan service of Bruce being in the mech suit is for one, the Shirley Walker Batman theme playing again, and really some of the most disturbing body horror of this entire series, as we've discussed, and memorable moments there. So yeah, it is. This one obviously is outside of our highest ranked episodes, but we're cracking the 30s now. So yeah, I think it's hard to disagree with this one being at number 8.
Absolutely. And next on our list here, we have number 7, the episode Mind Games,
Nope.
Which featured.
Nope. Nope. No.
I will say there's cool visuals in this one when Terry has to fight the adult version of Edgar Mandragora in the flashback. However, as we talked about, this also I think retroactively gets downgraded because some of those characters show up again in the Zeta Project, which makes us have to think and talk about the Zeta, which is always a seminal sin when anything makes us talk about the Zeta Project. So, kind of an interesting idea. The creepy like Wednesday Addams style girl is speaking to Terry in his mind. Is he going crazy? And then he sort of uncovers this strange school for gifted youngsters, if you will, and has to go toe to toe with, I guess, sorcery for the first time.
And magic and whatever else. Yeah. I'm actually surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised we gave it both gave it 28s. This is episode 105 of the show. So if you want to hear our review there, I thought this would have been ranked a little bit lower. Maybe again, it's because of the Zeta correlation there, but yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's an interesting idea. You know, a retroactive Easter egg being linked to one of my favorite Justice League episodes is pretty fun. But I don't know that I would put I would disagree with the placement of this one. I don't think it belongs this high on a list of the top episodes.
I agree. I don't think this cracks the top 12 as has been the arbitrary number picked by our writer here. And moving on to number 6, we do have Rebirth parts 1 and 2. We just talked about this. Again, it's what all of the rest of it of the show is built on. So yeah, of course it should be on the list, and it is a great pair of episodes, as we talked about, and a great introduction to the show, you know, introducing us to this weird like Blade Runner sci-fi world. It's very dirty and grimy. The subway being like an elevator where Terry and kind of the lower class people ride it up into the sleeker looking buildings to go to school and work is a nice touch. There's so much cool design stuff. The new bat suit, which it's almost ubiquitous because we've talked about every single episode and the movie. So like that Batman Beyond design is like when that show came out and we saw that's Batman, like that design is so simple, you know, an all black suit with a gray belt and a red bat, but man, it's so instantly iconic, and it fits that sort of cyberpunky world that they created for it. So yeah, great episodes. They belong on this list. Thumbs up there. No arguments.
Yeah, nothing much to add to that. Check out our original review episode 26. We were in the high 30 or the low 30s for that one rather as well. 32 and 31 out of 40 for our scores there. So check that out, and I imagine perhaps in the upcoming 2026 year you might hear us revisit that episode, maybe a couple others of this show next year. So stay tuned.
Well, we can't. Yeah, it's either that or all Zetas from now on, and we can't commit to that.
Yeah, can't do that.
So, unfortunately, yes, we'll have to mix in. Not unfortunately, fortunately, we'll be able to mix in some more re-reviews and character spotlights to revisit episodes like that, and maybe episodes like King's Ransom, the number 5 on this list, the third Royal Flush Gang episode. This one's fun. We were talking. This was another one that was on my short list for like an honorable mention, just because it has this weird intrigue plot where the Royal Flush Gang is kind of in disarray and they kidnap Paxton Powers to try to hold him for ransom, but then cut a side deal with him to kill Bruce so that Paxton can take over Wayne Powers completely. And then also King is having an affair with Paxton's secretary, which is just an assistant or somebody. It's just a wild, like, can't believe this was allowed in a kids cartoon type of twist at the end.
Hmm.
Yes, and there's minimal Terry being a terrible boyfriend, despite Melanie making an appearance, and we kind of get a sweet happy ending though, as she does. Jack is actually released, and she gets him a job at the restaurant she's working at. So maybe the kids are all right. Maybe Melanie and Jack will turn over a new leaf. That was their last appearance, so one can only hope.
That's right. Yeah, check out our review on episode 244 if you want to hear our review of that episode. We gave that one pretty high marks too, 32s across the board. So, an episode that we enjoyed, and again, this goes to show you we don't just hate Melanie. I don't just hate her goofy looking pasta hair. There is some redeeming quality to the idea of the Royal Flush Gang, and we flush it out here, so to speak. High marks for visuals and animation on that episode. We gave 9 out of 10 for both of us. So, yeah, check that out. I probably would argue maybe not this high on the list, but I can't say that I disagree that it doesn't belong in a top 12 conversation.
Absolutely. And that will bring us to number 4 here, which is the two-part episodes, The Call, parts 1 and 2. We already touched on this briefly. It's the introduction in real world timeline order. It's the first time we saw a DCAU Justice League, a full team up of more than 2 or 3 heroes at once. So that's very exciting. The episodes itself, it's kind of a wacky little mystery plot. There's a traitor in the league. Someone's picking off the league members one by one. Who is it? It's Superman, and also it's a giant starfish. We talked about that one. It's fun for all of that it represents. There's even maybe a little alluding to a future plot line that would be picked up in Justice League Unlimited in that episode. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I think you could make an argument it belongs on a list like this because it's very important to, it's Terry meeting the larger DC universe for the first time. I understand why it's on here.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It should be on the list. We gave it a 34 and a 31, so it's not like we poo-pooed this episode at all. You do have the issue that we just kind of addressed with the Spellbinder episode, where once you kind of know what the secret is as to who's hunting down the individual members of the Justice League. Once that's spoiled for you, it's less exciting. It also, when you have to sort of put to bed that Superman has been mind controlled by Starro for decades or whatever they say in in the show, trying to wrap your mind around that one and making that make sense is a little difficult as well. However, yeah, Superman and Batman Beyond get to interact on the same screen in the same episode. And oh, yeah, we get Starro and a bunch of these futuristic leaguers that we had never seen before. A new Green Lantern, Big Barda shows up for the first time in DCAU continuity. We get this Hawkman type character that, again, as we mentioned, plays a pretty interesting role in a storyline from another show later on. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that's set up here. The creation or the fact that just the Justice League Unlimited exists in this time frame here kind of was the precursor to what we would eventually get on screen later on. So yeah, you gotta love it. It's an important seminal episode and is memorable for a lot of reasons. I can't fault this, even if you wanted to put it in the top five of your list, and it didn't make our top five, but I'm not going to argue with anybody that puts it in their top five for that reason.
Agreed. And honestly, 2 and 1, we've already talked about at length here. So this is really our last meaty one to get into. The number 3, the third best episode of Batman Beyond ever, according to this list, is Splicers.
No.
The introduction of Splicers characters, the evil Dr. Cuvier and his Ram guy voiced by Ice-T, and the snake lady, or no, she's a tiger lady. There's a snake guy, and then Batman fights a weird snake bird man at the end.
Bad. Yeah, we did not like this episode, and this one I would probably do a duel to the death to defend the fact that this goes nowhere near the top 12. We both gave this a 21 out of 40, so that is really low for our scores. Somehow it's not in our bottom rankings, but it would be close based on some of the scores. Different criteria, we could probably an average it would be in the bottom there. But yeah, it's a goofy episode. They were trying something different. We didn't love some of the voice acting. I think looking back, we know that there are other people that can do Ice-T voiceover work better than Ice-T himself in the DCAU. So we didn't love the voice acting. I gave it a 4, and you gave it a 5. We didn't love the plot. Animation visuals was the strongest part that we gave it. So it looks cool, but yeah, the storyline itself is a little wacky, a little goofy, and just not our favorite. So yeah, this one I would argue is not a great episode for a multitude of reasons. But everyone is entitled to their opinion, even when it's wrong.
That's right. It does have, I guess it has Terry becomes Man-Bat for a minute. That's like the only thing I really remember about that episode, other than Dr. Cuvier turning into a bird snake at the end. I don't, yeah, whatever. That's according to this list. And then, yes, number 2 and number 1, we can kind of hit real quick. Number 2, they have Meltdown. We've already talked about it at length. The final appearance of Mr. Freeze. It's great. It belongs near the top, if not the top. And then number 1 is Out of the Past, which we just talked about at length. So no issues with those top 2. If you were feeling pedantic, you could argue more Terry focused episodes between Disappearing Ink and then Out of the Past and Meltdown. That's a lot of the Bruce episodes, and maybe, but hey, it's a 12 episode list. You mixed it up. We certainly did not agree with all of those picks. Some of them, I will go as far as to say certainly their placement on the list. Some of them, again, I just don't think they belong anywhere near the top 12. But that's, as we said, that's part of the fun, is that people are allowed to be wrong, and that's our action item. Is you can hit us up on the socials at DCAU Review. Let us know your top 5, top 10, top 12, and hey, if you score them the way that we do, you can also let us know your top scored episodes if you like. We always love when
play at home
to us with their own.
Play at home.
Absolutely. It's
enjoy. It's part of the fun. Also, I will just say this. I was unable to find, other than like a Reddit post, which I was not going to use, no reputable website has done a definitive ranking from best to worst or worst to best of Batman Beyond episodes. So if you're a listicle writer and you're looking for something to do next week for one of these comic book movies, or next year, comic book movie websites or something, write a list so that we can argue about it on our podcast, or maybe inspire someone to start their own podcast, as we were when the listicles started coming out with Batman the Animated Series. So that's another action item. If you are a writer and you choose, you're struggling for content, write a worst to best, and so people can talk about it, because that's fun.
Absolutely, it's always fun. And hey, yeah, if someone does all 52 episodes and Return of the Joker ranked in a listicle, and somebody sends it to us, we'll do it. That'll be its own bonus episode. We'll
For
we'll
sure.
amend this. That'll be the series overview part two, just to do that, because that's, like we said, it's always a lot of fun to see where people slot things on their own. But with all these niceties out of the way, let's end it with maybe some of the more fun. Sometimes it's fun to have an episode we didn't like, although as we maybe found out with one of our recent re-reviews, maybe we wouldn't agree with our past selves as we now head towards our finale here in the series overview of Batman Beyond with our lowest ranked episodes. And kicking it off also in episode 27, which is where we reviewed the very highly scored Blackout, as you mentioned, Cal. The episode Golem was ranked pretty lowly. You gave it a 19. I gave it an 18. We did recently review this, and I think we felt maybe we were a little too hard on it at the time. I wouldn't have expected Golem to be bottom of the barrel at the very least, especially when we get to some of the other ones on this list.
Yeah, I wonder again, some of these episodes, and that's why I kind of threw an asterisk at the beginning when we started talking. It's like most of these episodes are reviewed in a vacuum. The episodes that we reviewed two, and you notice we've kind of, other than Zeta, we've kind of ceased that practice for the most part. But the episodes where we reviewed two at a time, I think sometimes it would in some ways it could have been unfair to one of the episodes, because if you have such a really strong, memorable, interesting episode and then you watch one that's kind of middle of the road, you're tempted to be, I think, for it to be tainted a little bit and maybe negatively impact. You're like, look at this mass. It's like looking at, I don't know, the Mona Lisa compared to, like, an art student's final project in their second year of art school, and you're like, man, one of these is world renowned, appreciated, and the other one you're like, that's not great. Look at that, look at all the problems. But if you looked at the in a vacuum, a talented artist that creates a piece of art in the second year of their time at art school, compared to my drawing, would probably be like, wow, this is a masterpiece. This is incredible. This should be world renowned. So I think when you're comparing things, sometimes that can distort your scores. And I am willing to admit that I think, especially with, when we did our revisited version of this, the re-review of Golem, we did point out some of the things that were interesting in it, copying some of the 80s bully trope horror movie themes that kind of went with what we ended up with there. Some of the visual appreciations, the Golem robot being a literal light bulb with arms for the boy Willie Watt to control, was kind of a cute little thing that they did. And we also got to induct a new member of the worst DCAU dad family with Willie Watt's dad, with that re-review of that episode. So that at original time of review, we didn't have that club yet. So yeah, a second look was worth it. I don't think that we hated it as much or disliked it as much the second time that we watched it, but our scores remain the same for what we originally gave them, which are 19 and 18 out of 40. So yeah, those are not great scores. I do know that the plot was not loved by you. I didn't seem to really enjoy the voice acting or the music for that episode when we watched it the first time. So again, I don't know how much of that was juxtaposed against the other episode that we reviewed, but yeah, I don't think it belongs anywhere near the top. But as far as worst episodes, I think there are probably worse episodes. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, there definitely are, because we'll get to a few here, but several episodes down the road, and when we reviewed, it was our episode 104 of our podcast. We reviewed the episode Rats, another Hall of Fame hashtag Dana deserves better episode, but it's just kind of an oddball episode. Like, I'm kind of surprised to see it's that low of a score. But it's just this sort of disfigured guy who's hanging out in the sewers. He's maybe sort of vaguely based on the rat catcher villain from like the 90s Batman runs that he appeared in, that controls rats, kidnaps Dana, and officer all these like shiny trinkets. like because he's a rat. Get it? Um, and tries to and then Batman has to like trudge through the sewers, and meanwhile Terry's getting like threatened by Dana's dad because Terry was supposed to be there for her, and because he wasn't, she got kidnapped. So once again, it's his fault because he's the worst boyfriend of all time. Like maybe we were just mad at Terry and we took it out on him on our scores in this episode. But like I said, this one was definitely not good. Like this, but I'm surprised this didn't just end up more middle of the road because I think of this more as a boring one than like a terrible one. But maybe that's why. Maybe just sometimes being boring bad is worse than being like memorably bad, as we've talked about from time to time.
I think we had a problem with the culmination of the episode being Batman fighting giant mutant rats. I think that is kind of
Oh
goofy.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, didn't love that. According to our description of the episode, we poke some serious holes in the plot and discuss Dana's potential undiagnosed low self-esteem. So,
Yeah. Because she does just like get back with Terry at the end of that episode too, which I
yeah,
remember being very relieving.
yeah, not great to set up some of our choices here for our strong female supporting character there. But yeah, I don't like this episode. I really don't have any desire to ever watch it again, so I wouldn't nominate this for a re-review. I will say, I just not a fan of the idea of Batman fighting a bunch of rats. That just doesn't do it for me. It's imagine Batman fighting, I don't know, a bunch of alligators or something like that in the sewers. Like just not who would ever do that? Like not a good idea. Not interesting.
Absolutely. And that would lead us almost 90 some episodes or 80 some episodes later in episode 191 of the pod. By the way, we each gave rats 19 apiece if we didn't say that. But in episode 191, we got to April Moon, which you gave a 17. Wow. I think that is from either of us, that is the lowest score any episode of Batman Beyond got,
It is.
shockingly. And I gave it a 21, so I wasn't that much higher than you. I just remember thinking this episode's a bit silly. It's like Batman's fighting a bunch of guys who have like buzz saws in their knees, and then also it turns out his wife's cheating on him at the end. Like the doctor who made the buzzsaw knee guys, he did it because they kidnapped his wife, and then it turns out his wife was in on it at the end, and Batman disarms all of them because there's a secret kill switch that blows up all of their weaponry that's inside their bodies
Mhm.
if he says April Moon. So the finale of this episode is just Batman just repeating the words April Moon over and over again as buzzsaw knee guys explode and stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, we did
Not
not
great.
like this. Yeah, we didn't like this episode. I gave the plot a 2, so that tells you the plot was the real horror show here. Yeah, I love our description here as we say, we struggle to figure out who the heroes are and why the main plot point centers around a bowl of cereal. These are the age-old questions that many people have asked over
Flaky
the centuries.
Flakes. Yes,
Uh,
Flaky Flakes. There's a seminal.
yeah,
Flaky Flakes are for kids.
that's right.
That's what
Uh,
we learned from this episode.
it is. It is what we learned. But yes, it is not a good episode. It's visually, I think is probably the most interesting thing. Although I remember us struggling to figure out how having buzzsaws in your knees would actually work for dexterity and all of that. But yeah, not a good episode.
Yes,
Don't put this one on the list for re-reviews anytime soon.
absolutely not. And next up, much later down the line, in episodes 334 and 335, we covered the two-part adventure, The Curse of Cobra, or as we called it, Terry's friend leads a snake cult, I think. That being, we both gave it an 18, so not far behind that April Moon. The snake cult decides they want to turn themselves into dinosaurs. And then they're going to create global warming because dinosaurs are cold-blooded. So they're going to flood the earth with a heat bomb that they're going to drop into a volcano because the snake people decide to turn themselves into dinosaurs, which are different than snakes.
Correct.
Bad
Bad.
episode.
Horrible
Bad
episode.
2 episode.
It's a bad. I mean, we get the introduction of this person from Batman's past, also that's kind of supposed to be this big reveal, as one of the people that he trained with under the his sensei. That was eventually how he met Kyodai Ken, and it doesn't. The reveal is like fart in church. It's just like who is this person that I'm supposed to know who this is? And then she she unnecessarily kills herself, like sacrifices herself at the end. She like runs into a fire for no reason. Like she had plenty of time to get into one of the escape pods and chooses to not do that. So yeah, I remember being frustrated with that. It's not a great episode. It's 2 parts. It's like, why did this episode get 2 parts, but some of the other episodes, that we've talked about didn't didn't get afforded that luxury and had to cram their plot into 22 minutes. I don't know. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The dinosaur thing is wacky. Bad episode. Bad, 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 bad. Should have probably been ranked lower, honestly. Like, this is a case where our scoring system is a disservice to ourselves, because this belongs in the lower categories and should be talked about in the same breath as Superman's pal and Unity and the Underdwellers and all of the other bad episode jars.
Like 7 episodes of Zeta. Yeah. Yeah, it's rough. It's a rough one. And that is reflected in our scores, as was just a few episodes later, episode 354, Countdown. Speaking of Zeta, I did not set that up on purpose, but here it is. The return of Zeta to the Batman Beyond series. In the episode, he's got a bomb strapped to his back thanks to Mad Stan. It relies on Zeta just being incredibly naive, which by this point in his own series, he should at least be smart enough to like know who Mad Stan is like a famous criminal. And so it's this weird sort of ticking time bomb where he and Ro get separated, and then Ro tracks down Batman. And so Batman and Ro are trying to find Zeta so they can find this bomb. And Mad Stan sedates himself so he can't give up the location or something, or can't give up the disarm code. Yeah, it's not great. As it is mildly fun to see Batman, Zeta, and Ro like teaming up, but that's kind of where the fun begins and ends, unfortunately, because the episode itself is pretty weak.
They also just repeated the same plot from the final cut, which is Batman trying to find a bomb in the city before it goes off and detonates and kills a whole bunch of people, which is, you literally have already done this storyline plot previously, and now you're doing it and making the hero of your other show look like an idiot. Yeah, I was much more harsh on this one. I gave it a 19, as you mentioned, and you a 23. But yeah, not anywhere near some of the higher episodes at all. This episode is a disservice to the series, and as you can tell here, a lot of the episodes that we got ranked lower are towards the back end of this series run, unfortunately. So you could see that unfortunately just the quality of the stories just started getting more and more sillier and subpar for multitude of reasons. Obviously, we talked about it when we reviewed the episodes, but yeah, not a great way to have this crossover star feel like an important part of your universe, having them be the dummy that's walking around about to explode.
Absolutely. You do get the one fun bit at the end where Zeta's driving the Batmobile. That's the only redeeming part of that episode that I can think of.
Yeah,
he and Terry pulled the old switcheroo, but that's about it. And then, yeah, we alluded to this when we talked about it being on the top 12 episodes list on that Slash Film article. The last episode on our list, we just covered it 2 episodes ago, episode 377, Unmasked. You gave it a 23. You were a bit more generous, and I gave it a 19, the reverse of our countdown scores, actually. Yeah, I mean, we just covered this very recently, so you can certainly head back just a couple weeks ago in the archives and hear our full at-length thoughts. But suffice it to say, we talked about it. is it partially colored by the fact that it's also, we know the sort of the story history of it being the final episode to air? You know,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't even make it to Kids WB, as we talked about. It aired on Cartoon Network later, maybe. But as we talked about it, it's not even that. It's just not very interesting because, one, it's another Cobra episode, and like there's like a weird magic mind machine that's going to reveal Terry's secret identity, and I don't. It's just not very interesting, as it turns out.
Yeah, we it suffered like maybe the for multiple reasons. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It is unfair to necessarily judge it as a finale, but the truth is it is the finale and it doesn't feel like a finale and it feels just like a middle of the road episode in a lot of ways. And because of that, it's disappointing. And on top of that, there's some goofiness that occurs for the plot to have to happen. And it very much revolves around some of that goofiness for you to, I guess, enjoy it. I don't know. Not a great episode, not very interesting, and not a good finale. So 3 strikes and you're out.
Absolutely. So that wraps up our lowest ranked episode. Once again, hit us up on the socials at DCAU review. Let us know your thoughts on the lowest ranked. Again, show your work. Give us your lowest scored episodes if you like. We'd love to hear from you. And another way, as Cal mentioned, that you can get in touch with us and let us know your feedback. And in fact, we'll read your feedback on the air. Is, of course, if you support us at buymeacoffee.com. And our friend Zach is back, one of our supporters this week, and he has, I thought, an interesting question. As we get to the end of our Batman Beyond overview, he had a sort of, I would say, a companion to his question with the last episode, and here it is from our buddy Zach, which is: which of the following original Batman villains would you like to have learned the fate of? And he lists the Riddler, Mad Hatter, Baby Doll, the Scarecrow, or Two-Face. Those are his picks, and he mentions that Two-Face is his personal pick. Um, Great question, Zach. We appreciate it. Again, if you'd like to get your question read out on the air, head to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. All right, Cal. Riddler, Scarecrow, Mad Hatter, Baby Doll, Scarecrow, or good old Harvey. If you could have picked one of those characters to appear in Batman Beyond, which would it have been?
Excuse me. It's a good question. I think I'm gonna go with what feels like the oddball there. I think with Spellbinder, you already have like a Scarecrow type character. Two-Face is
Mm-hmm.
obviously interesting, but his relationship with Bruce would make it a much more Bruce-centric episode. I do think there would have been some there, and this actually is kind of cheating because it's using my own fan theory here, but. I would like to know what happened to the Mad Hatter because I believe that the Mad Hatter's technology was actually used to by the Joker in a way to create the ultimate material that allowed him to rewrite Tim Drake's DNA in Return of the Joker, as we talked about that fan theory in the Make 'em Laugh episode,
Mm-hmm.
where the Joker uses
Of
these
all
little
episodes, this is one that spun the fan theory.
That's right. The Joker uses these little round patches to control, the minds of these famous comedians. And then when Batman and Robin go to investigate it, they see that the Mad Hatter has one of these patches on his neck. It's his technology that's been turned against him, and that the Joker is behind it. And it's in the same spot as we learn in Return of the Joker that Tim Drake has this same exact patch on the back of his neck, this little electronic patch that has helped rewrite his DNA. So I
Mm-hmm.
think an episode where we kind of either that bridges that we kind of figure out that his technology is being used, or was used to rewrite people's DNA, or we kind of get some more people that the Joker has maybe not done the same thing to, but I don't know. I think that would be an interesting one because I think you could have enough of a standalone story for it to be connected to Terry, while still feeling nostalgic enough to connect it, obviously, to the old show. And you wouldn't necessarily need Bruce's involvement to kind of anchor the thing like you would probably with a Two-Face episode. Not that that wouldn't be an interesting episode. I would of course love to know the fates of all of these characters. But I think if I'm just playing by my own set rules for whatever reason here, I'm going to keep it a Terry-centric story, but we have some mind control and maybe some of that technology that's kind of linking our past to our future here.
Yeah, I love that choice. Mine, kind of similarly, I think I like the idea of maybe someone whose physical body has passed on, but perhaps with the advent of virtual reality, perhaps the same type we saw in the episode What is Reality? Perhaps the Riddler
Mm.
survives on as like a computer virus that
Oh.
infects, maybe he gets into the back computer somehow.
Hmm.
And one, any excuse to bring back John Glover into this series would have been a delight, especially because he's a bit hard done by in the new Batman adventures, as we've alluded to.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think I like the idea of like a not maybe not the real Riddler. Like you don't need 95-year-old Eddie Nigma in a wheelchair puttering around, but the idea of a digital Riddler sort of taking control of the bat computer, and maybe Terry has to go back into that wacky red old school computer world to fight that Riddler for some reason, or find some piece of information. Again, there's a bomb, there's something going on. I like the idea of like a digital Riddler coming back from the grave, a ghost in the machine, if you will, but not that one.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. I think that that's one that I think some other fans have thought would be interesting to kind of learn the future. And that the Riddler as a character being so disserviced with the new Batman adventures, I think it made people a little bit hungry
Mm.
for a resolution. It's too bad Bruce Timm hates the Riddler as a character. So he wasn't interested in using him in the later series. So yeah, I think I think that would have been equally interesting, and you could have find a way to meld that futuristic Blade Runner, Ready Player One world of technology and classism to kind of create an interesting story there with the Riddler living on and maybe besting. Maybe I mean you could involve Bruce with a story like that. I think there's a theory, or there was a storyline that was going to be used maybe in one of the Batman tie-in comics of the Riddler kind of faking his own death, and Batman not being able to solve it, and that being one of Batman's ultimate failures, I think. So yeah, that would have been interesting to
Mhm.
kind of bring that into the future, and maybe have Terry be the one that solves whatever the thing was, which would then
Yeah.
kind of move the mantle forward there as a feather in Terry's cap.
I love that. Yeah, I think ultimately any episode, like we said, that challenges Terry in a more intellectual or emotional way, as opposed to just another guy for him to throw fists with, I think would have been fun. So great question again from our supporters, Zach. And again, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. That is the best way to support us monetarily. Another way to support us monetarily is, of course, you can look in our show notes on whatever app you're using to listen to this show, and you'll find a link to our store where you can pick yourself up a mug or a shirt or something as well. That's another great way. And of course, there's all the free great ways to support us. Follow us on all the socials at DCAU Review. You can make sure you're subscribed to us on whatever podcast platform you choose, your Apples, your Spotify's, etc. And if it lets you rate us, if it lets you give us 5 stars, give us 5 stars. If it lets you leave a review, leave a review. We'll even read those reviews on air. If we get a new 5 star one, we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll have one in the coming weeks here. But anyway, we appreciate everyone who supports us. And yeah, as we have now wrapped up this second series, or maybe first series, as Cal said, depending on how you look at the TNBA. We would love to know, as we will from time to time come back, like we have with Superman and some of the other shows that we have very few episodes of left, Do folks like the character spotlights? You want to hear us re-review some of those very early reviewed episodes like we did with Golem earlier this year? We would love to hear your feedback on how you'd like us to tackle Batman Beyond when we take visits to the future in the future. Whether that's next year or 50 years from now, whenever now is, we look forward to still from time to time peppering in some Batman Beyond episodes, even if our traditional reviews have dried up here. But Cal, as we keep rocketing forward in this month of November, next week, believe it or not, is already going to be Thanksgiving, one of the big holidays here in the US. And while we won't have a regular episode next weekend, we do have something of a tradition that always drops the day after Thanksgiving.
That's right, Liam. It is our, I don't know how many annual this is, because this podcast has been going on, as we said, for 8 years. I think this is our fifth or sixth annual Black Friday episode that we will be dropping on Black Friday, of course. So while if you're listening to us internationally, you may not have anything but a work day on Thursday. But of course, regardless of where you are, Friday officially kicks off the shopping season for the Christmas holiday season and the rest of the holidays that are celebrated in December as well. So if you are fixing to get in the mood, maybe you're going out shopping, or maybe you are just settling in, having some leftover Thanksgiving food, or maybe you're working on Friday and you need something to pass the time, we will be dropping our annual Black Friday episode. Liam, this year, each and every year, we talk about something shopping related, which always lands on toys or something DCAU related. We did video games one year. Last couple of years, we've done wish lists for some of our favorite companies that are still producing DCAU figures. This year, we're going back to looking at some of the figures that have already been created, some of the best toys, arguably, and I think we can debate this fairly on the episode, the best line of DCAU toys ever created was the incredible line of Justice League and then Justice League Unlimited toys created by Mattel in the early 2000s, leading all the way up to the late 2000, the late aughts, heading almost into the 2010 era. So many years of toys based on the action figures, based on the show, many years even after the show is off the air. The characters are still being created for that, creating one of the most vast and thorough DCAU lines in history. We're going to be talking about our favorite Mattel Justice League and Justice League Unlimited figures on our Black Friday special, dropping next Friday. Once again, in place, we're taking the week off from our normal episodes, no Saturday review, but instead, you'll get a Black Friday episode for your listening enjoyment.
Absolutely, Cal. Can't wait to discuss that. We're going to pick our favorites from that very, very deep line, and then perhaps equally as challenging, we're going to try to think of one figure that wasn't made in that line, if you can even imagine it, and say which one we wish could have gotten made. We'll have to get really deep in our bag. We'll get real nerdy with it, as we always love doing on these Black Friday episodes. So can't wait to take care of that and begin celebrating this holiday season with you next week. But until then, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Merry Thanksgiving. Wait, that's next week. Still watching this week.
Yeah, it's good.